Hello everyone, welcome to the Guideline solution for assignment 10. So in this assignment, we actually took some macros and some functions. So we'll see how that goes. But maybe the first thing we should notice is like the extension for our files are now what would lead us to believe that this is a macro, okay? So usually, if you create an Excel file or if you use one that we gave you, the extension would be .xlsx. That's just the extension for an Excel file. But now the extension is xlsm, meaning like macro. Okay, so for the first exercise, we want to record a macro. So let's see how we can do that with the file that we're given. Now, before we actually start, it might be important to we're going to need this developer tab at some points, and it might not be right away given to you, so you might have to enable it. So to do that, you go to File Options, and then here in Customize ribbon, you toggle on and off the developer. So if it's already on, you should see the developer tab. If it's not, if you can't see the developer tab, this is probably unchecked. You just have to check it and press OK. Again, it's File at the very bottom, Options. Then we go to Customize ribbon, enable or disable this. Okay, now for the first one, we want to record our macros. So under the developer tab, you can go to record macro, and you could actually see it as well under the view tab at the very right, macros record. So both are the same. So I'll just say here record macro. Name it whatever they tell you to name it. So they want us to name it fill_data, and we're gonna give it a shortcut Ctrl+M. So fill_data, and the shortcut is Ctrl+M. This just means if you ever press Ctrl+M, you're using this macro. Now, very important, once I press OK, I'm currently recording. Like you'll notice here, it's asking me if I want to stop recording. Everything that I do right now in the Excel, so like writing in the cells or maybe inserting some extra rows, they all take effect. What do I mean by that? So let's see. In the very first instruction, they're saying, oh, insert 8 rows before the first row. A lot of you skip this step maybe, and you had to do things all over again, because like, what does it mean to insert 8 rows? Like if you insert them one by one, so right now I inserted 2, or like I can select 6 and then insert them at once. So technically just now I inserted 8 rows. It might not seem like I did anything, but it's actually very important what I did, because now if I type something here like, oh, test 1, if I now stop recording, what currently have I done in my macro? I inserted 8 rows and then I typed in test 1. So if I now press, I'm going to press as a shortcut the Ctrl+M that we talked about. What's going to happen? It's going to execute everything I just did. It's going to insert 8 rows, then it's going to write at the very top cell test 1. So I'll do that, Ctrl+M. And you notice this happened like automatically. 8 rows were inserted, so like the first test 1 got pushed downwards, then this got written. This is the new one. If I press Ctrl+M again, it keeps happening and happening. So everything you do is being literally recorded, okay? Now, what you actually want to do is this format. So like there's filtering, or not filtering, but there's like a lot of customization, formatting, etc. that you want to do. So you just follow all the steps, etc. Just make sure you, first of all, you insert 8 rows, because after you're like what I did was I only inserted 8 rows and I wrote test. But what you're gonna do is insert 8 rows, then you're gonna do this whole format thing. So when you press Ctrl+M, what you wrote is gonna be copied pasted essentially, just like what happened to me with test 1. But instead of a test 1, it'll be this fancy box with your name and all that customization. Cool. And that's really everything you want to do. And at the very end, you stop recording. I won't do the steps before, because you should be pretty familiar with customizations. Just try to get the colors as close as possible, the formats, the pattern, etc. All that. You can go and review like the very first few sessions we did in Excel in case you forgot any of them. So they tell you try to run on different sheets and on the same sheet. So we already did it on the same sheet. We could also do it on a different sheet. So if I go to, I could make a new page here, and if I press Ctrl+M, it also happens here. So currently I'm in sheet 1, and if I press Ctrl+M, like it happens as well. I accidentally now pressed Ctrl+N, which creates a new window. Control M is the shortcut that I want, and it keeps doing it almost endlessly. Okay. So like there's no amount you should do here. You just want to test it out. So by using the shortcut, we did that, or by selecting the macro name. So could I actually go to my macros? So in the developer, there's the macros button. It shows you all the macros that you currently have. I have full data, which I just like made. I can run it, or I can just use the shortcut. Okay, maybe one last important thing for this exercise is we actually want to use a button to do this instead of having to use the Control M or like go to the macros, check what it is, and run it. I could actually use a button. So this you need to have the developer enabled to do this. So you press the developer. It has its own special insert, just like we have a regular insert for tables and all that. The developer has its own insert, and we want a button. So this very first one is a button. You can choose how big you want the button to be. Then you choose which macro you want to assign that button. We only have one macro, so we'll use that. Okay, so I have button 1. You can name it whatever you want, like, not sure if they gave it a name, but we'll just say press me or click me. And now when I press this one, what's going to happen? 8 rows are going to be inserted, and then test 1. Everything gets pushed down. Even the button itself is going to get pushed down. Why? 8 rows were inserted, and then test 1 got written. Okay. In our case, it's not going to be, in your case, it's not going to be test 1. It's going to be the actual required formatting and all that. But yeah, that was it for exercise 1 for recording macros. Now we go to exercise 2, where we're going to be doing something similar, but more in the backside of things. Like, again, and for this one, you're going to need developer, and you're going to choose Visual Basic at the very start here. Now, technically, we could open one of the sheets. Where are they? Okay, none of these. Maybe model 1, yeah. Let me close everything I opened. So model 1, this is technically the fill data that I just created. I didn't write any of this code. It got auto-generated because as I was recording, this thing happened. Okay, and like if you dive into it real quick, it's just a matter of like inserting some rows and writing the word test1, etc. For what you had to do, you would have gotten a very long fill data function because of all the formatting and that. Okay, so it's pretty cool to see how your coding is actually being interpreted here. Like we can see test1, we can see something like insert where I inserted the rows. The names are familiar. At some point I did resize the column of A, and you'll notice here maybe it's resizing the width of the column. Okay, but for now, for exercise 2, we're going to say insert, right click here, and insert model. So we're going to be inserting another model for our other functions. We could technically have them all in like one place, but I'd rather separate them, at least for this first lab, on this stuff, so there's no confusion. No confusion. Okay, here we are, model 2. So what does this exercise want? Open sheet statistics. Create a macro called perform statistics that fills the cells from N7 to N10 as followed. So we open the statistics sheets. We want to make a function. We want to make a macro. Notice that there's a button here. So just like we did our own button here that we assigned, we click it, it does something. Eventually here, this button, we want to click it, it wants to fill these cells. So we don't want to fill them ourselves. We want to use a function that does that for us, or a macro. More specifically, functions are something else. If we're going to be very technical, what we're going to be doing is a subroutine, or like, let's just call it a macro. So I'll say sub, and we'll name it perform statistics because that's what they want. Okay, once you press enter, it'll auto-fill the rest of the things. Like it'll say end sub on its own. But essentially what this is I have a macro called perform statistics. It starts here, it ends here. Everything I write inside will be what actually happens. Just like before with sub fill data, that's our macro. It ends here, and everything inside is what happens. So back here. Now, we will need to look at the Excel sheet. So for the first one, we want the range of prices received. So I have to write a statement that will fill in this very cell, which is at N7. So at N7, we want to fill that. Now, normally, if I wanted to get the range of price received, I'd say what? Oh, something like the min of the price received concatenated with maybe a dash. Remember the shift 7 for concatenation, and then the max for the rest. So I'd do something like this. And I get the range. Maybe I'd need to add some dollar signs somewhere, but this is not what we want to do. They're not asking to do it right here. We want to do it in our macro. So going back to the macro, it's literally the same thing. We just need to use some things that we're not maybe familiar with. So I'll press the tab. It doesn't make a difference if I type my code here or if I type it at the very beginning. It doesn't make a difference. Like, these are what we call white spaces. Remember, they're similar to these spaces. So if I can put as many as I want, won't make a difference. But I will press tab, which pushes me forward a few spaces, and I will write my code here because it's better for organization. It's better for readability. So now, remember, in cell N7, I want to change something. So I'll actually say cells. That's a function to change the value of a cell. You first have to give it the row number, which is 7, and then you have to give it the column index, which is the letter N, so we'll give it between quotations. 7 is a number, is just a number, we don't need to. But very important, I'm saying 7, N. Just like a regular function that we used to do, like the min and max, it takes certain parameters. This function takes the number of the cell and the letter of it. So like the row index and the column index. Now, what do I want? I want to put the min and the max. Okay. So we'll need to actually use, so notice something right now, I can't click here anymore. So this is something you might have run into. Whenever you open a cell in Excel, if you currently are editing a cell, you can't go back here and edit it as well. So you're going to have to finish what you're doing here. Like, I'll just press enter or press outside the cell to stop editing it. And I can go back and actually edit here. So there's something called worksheet function dot. And like the worksheet function, worksheet is literally everything we have here. These are all worksheets. And like, remember the functions, they're the min, the max, and all that. So I will use worksheet function dot min. And remember, now that's just like before. I want to give it a range. So there's actually something called range. And I'll give it from which cell to which cell I want to work with. Say I give it, what was the range there? From H5 till H44. So let's see how that works. Now I wonder if I give it this, if it will work or not. So I might get an error somewhere. Yeah, I think we need to have this whole thing between quotations. We can't memorize everything, of course, so we'll try our best as we go. So currently in N7, I'm only putting the minimum. This is a single statement. I'm saying this, the answer of this will be put on the left-hand side. So this equal sign is like an assignment. Whatever is on the right-hand side will be evaluated, then it will be put on the left-hand side. So let's actually, I can press this button to run. And if I do that, when I press this button, here, hopefully I should find the minimum appearing. Okay, it's asking me which macro do I want to run. I want to use perform statistics. Let's run it. And yes, indeed, 0 appeared here. Why? Because 0 is your minimum, right? Cool. So now I just want to keep going. Now, very important, I can't write on a new line cells N7 worksheet function max, right? Intuitively, I should use max next to get the max. But I can't do this because if I do this and we press run, notice how 17,664 appeared. Not 0 and 17, only the max. Why? Because if you write it again, this on the next cell, it'll erase the old value. Imagine temporarily you wrote the minimum here, then you overwritten it with the max. So you can't You can't do that. Instead, you'd use concatenation. Just like we did in Excel, we'd use concatenation here. I'd say something like and. Okay, it looks like a long line. It looks complicated, but all we're saying is, oh, the minimum is concatenated with the maximum. And let me just put a dash in between so we get the same format as before. So the min concatenated with the dash, concatenated with the rest, with the max. Very important, make sure the concatenation is on its own. Don't stick it with other things. It might be confused. Excel might become confused. So make sure you space things out. So we'll run this, perform statistics. And yes, we're getting what we got before, but we want the dollar sign at the beginning, so I'll put maybe $1 here, concatenated with the rest. So now $1 will appear next to the 0, and if I want $1 next to the max, I'll put it here. Why am I putting that there? You can like pause and figure it out. But if we run it, they become in their appropriate positions. Could maybe even add a space so they're not directly concatenated, if it looks better. Maybe before was better. The important thing is that we can see the dollar. But yeah, that's for the first part. Now everything for the rest of the cells, like the number of items, the total price, the average vehicle price received, it's the same thing. We just keep going. But very important, I don't write another subroutine for this. I don't do perform statistics twice, or I don't do perform statistics here and then perform statistics A here, like another part. No, they said we want to do this in one function. So now I'll go to the cell underneath it. So cell 8N, we're in the same column, we're just going down one row. And now they want what? So in N8, the number of items in the auction. Well, what do you think? Worksheet function dot count. Now I'll use count A just to be safe, because remember, with count you have to give it numbers and it'll count them. I'll say count A because count A just counts the number of non-blank, and I'll give it the same range as before. Let's just run it. I think that's really all we need to do here. We're counting. We run. And then, yeah, 40 appears. All I did was I'm counting A with the range of H5 till H44. It's literally as if you came over here and you wrote count A and you gave it the range of this. Now, technically, you could have given it any column. You didn't have to give it the same price received. It could have given it maybe the sold and it would have worked. But yeah, as long as you give it a column that doesn't have any like empty cells, this should work. Moving on, what do they want next? Total price collected. So this looks like a sum, but what do we want to sum? We want to sum the total price. So now it's actually J, what we want to work with. Well, I'll copy and paste because it's going to be really similar. Now we're working in N7, N9. We're summing, and we want to go from, I think I said J, right? So from J5 till J44. You'll notice it's really, really similar. If you just ignore maybe the word worksheet function that makes this whole thing really big, all we're using really is min, count A, sum, things from statistical functions that we should be comfortable with. We are comfortable with them, but maybe it's been a while since we worked with them. So if I press run, I get this really big number. Is it right? It is 144751. Cool. Keep going. Average vehicle price received. Okay. Now this is where some people might have gotten confused. So you're going on a roll, and then here you read the word average, so you just replace sum by average. Okay. Then you pressed run, you got some number, but it's not the number that they're asking for. So here they want 5,700, but we got 3,600. So why is that? Because average is not enough. You can't use only average here. They're not saying give me the average. They're saying the average vehicle price received. Okay, I actually gave it the wrong range as well. So for the price received, it's in H. In the column H, if I run it, I'm still getting a wrong number in the 2000. So it's not average, it's average if. But very important, what should I give average if? In case you forgot, here Excel actually tells you, hopefully. So here it tells me, oh, argument as range 1, argument 2, argument 3. In case you forgot, you can always go back here, say average if, and it tells you, oh, the range, the criteria, then the average range. So first I have to give it the range where my criteria is, which is right, oh, where are you? So here we are, the vehicle should be here. Okay, so category vehicle is what we care about. Okay, so average if, first I have to give it, oops, I forgot to check, so it's in D. So first I give it the range of my criteria, which is just D5 till D44. You'll notice how I'm making use of things I've wrote before. I would advise to try to write everything yourself so you get accustomed to it. And then maybe later you can copy for shortcuts. Okay, so now what's my criteria? It's vehicles. I'm never able to write this word correctly from the first try. So let's see how they wrote it. Okay, HIC. Okay, so that's vehicles. But very important, it's vehicles. It's not vehicle. That will make a complete difference. So I know in the question they said price received, average vehicle price received, but when you're actually writing the criteria, you'd write it as vehicles because that's how it appears here. Okay. Finally, you want to give it the range of the actual calculation, which is price received, right? So they want the price received of vehicles. So I'll give it just the range of H5 till H44. Now the reason is I'm not getting any error because I'm writing the syntax really correctly. Like here, average if, you give it the range, comma, criteria, comma, then the range of the calculation. Okay, very important. If I don't put a comma, I'll get problems, like something goes wrong. If I don't close the brackets correctly, that's also a problem. Like right now you'll see it's calling it in red because, oh, I wrote something wrong. Why? I have here a missing bracket. Now did it actually tell me what was the problem? Let's see. Yeah, it did. Expected list operator or like this bracket. Like it's hard for Excel to really know what the problem is. That's why it doesn't specifically tell you what it is, but it's kind of hinting here that, oh, you might have a missing parentheses somewhere. So it's up to you to find where. My advice is try to really carefully read everything you're writing. If you're still not able to find the error, maybe rewrite the statement. Like leave it like this. Don't look at it, but like go to a new line. Don't look at the red and try to solve it again. And maybe you'll write it correctly the second time, or maybe you'll be able to find the problem. Okay, finally, let's run this. We get 5,700, and if you remember, that was the number that we want. Great, we want to run the macro. We want to also assign it to the button as we mentioned. So to do that, I can right-click the button, assign macro, just choose what I want. I could use full data, the one that I did at the beginning, but that's not what we want. We want perform statistics and click OK. Now, if I run it, how do I know if it's actually working? Well, I can simply choose these cells, press delete to remove them. Now, when I press this button, what's going to happen? This code that I wrote, it's going to apply. It's going to be executed. Just like before with full data, this code that was auto-generated, it got executed. So it inserted 8 rows. Then it wrote test 1. So same thing here. When I press perform statistics, it's gonna do this line, then this line, then this line, then this line. So essentially everything that we wrote just gets executed and it fills up the rows that we care about or the cells that we care about, which is great. Cool. Let's move on to the, I think it's the final. No, we might still have a couple of questions. So triangle areas. So this is our actually now we're actually maybe writing an actual function. So before I was saying, oh, we want to do a function, but then I corrected myself, we want to do a subroutine. Here they're actually asking create a VBA function, and it's different from a routine. First of all, the main difference would be this one is going to take some arguments. I'm not sure if subroutines could actually take arguments or not, but this one, it's going to take an argument, and you're creating a function. That means, just like before, I can go into Excel and type in min, and there's a function min, or I can say average if, and there's a function average if. Similar to this stuff, we're going to be creating our own function that you can use inside the cell. So that's very important. If I now say equals fill data, there's no fill data that I created before. Okay, so the subroutine fill data is not here, and like the perform statistics, it's not here either. So that's very important. Like the subroutines don't appear. You either assign them to buttons or there's a shortcut. But the functions, they do appear. So we'll insert a new model. Again, I could technically start the function here, but I like to put them on different models if they're not really related. So what do they want us to name it? So function, say triangle area. You notice now it's saying end function instead of end sub because this is a function, it's not a routine. Okay, triangle area that takes an argument, the base and the height of the triangle in centimeter and in centimeter cubed or squared. Okay, so it's going to take two parameters. Parameters, we write them between these parentheses. So remember, like minimum, literally it's a function. It takes parameters. Like when I give it 3, 4, and 5, what happens? There's somebody wrote a function called min. I'm giving it as arguments these 3 numbers, and it's summing them together, or not summing them. This is the min. It's giving me the smallest number between all these. And they wrote it in a way where I could give it numbers, I could give it ranges, etc. It just gets me the smallest. So here, same thing. We're going to be taking arguments. We'll call them height as, I'll talk about that in a second, as single, and width as single. Now, very important, this is not the as from databases, it's something else. Here we're saying height, its type is single, and width, its type is single. So each variable needs a certain type. Like, what is it? Is it a string, which is a sequence of characters? Is it a number, etc.? So single, you can think of it, it's like a number. Okay, so height and width, they're simply numbers. Okay, is that everything they want? So yeah, take the base and the height. So yeah, maybe not the width, the base here. Height and base. The name doesn't make a difference. I could have called them X and Y. What we're about to do would still work with X and Y, right? But we usually like to name the variables things that are meaningful. Okay, the result should be rounded to the nearest 1 decimal points. Fair. You can use the worksheet function round. Okay, first of all, let's calculate this. Let's calculate this area. So the area of a triangle is simply height times base over 2. So if I multiply the height by the base and I divide by 2, I get the triangle area. However, I want to put that answer somewhere. And some of you try to do this. Some of you try to say, oh, cells. And you went and got the cell name here, which is F7. You try to put it in F7 and so on, and something like this. The problem with this is you're always doing it for F7. Remember, we're doing a function and we're going to be dragging it. With functions, if you write the name of the function and say equals, the thing that you calculate will be, this is how you do it. You just write the name of the function. Your final answer should be put there. So when I say height times base over 2, the answer will be put wherever you're calling the function from. So let's do a quick example. If I say here, triangle area, notice how it's now appearing. Before, I'm not sure if I tried it before, but before it would not have appeared because we did not create it yet. Now we did create triangle area. I'll give it, and very important that I give the order of the variables just like how I'm using them. So first I'm taking in the height, then the base. So I should first give it the height, comma, base. Why am I doing like this? Well, I made a function that takes two parameters, the height and the base, and I'm just giving it those parameters. When I press enter, what's going to happen? In my code, it's taking the height, which is 2.5, putting it here, and taking the base, which is 3, and putting it here, and then I'm simply multiplying them together and dividing by 2. The answer will be put wherever you're calling the function from. So I'm calling it here in F7. It just appears, 3.75. Very important, when I drag down, it keeps going. So now it's doing it for E8 and D8. Remember the whole dragging down. This is why in the code you don't specify F7 or some cell name when we're talking about functions. At least in this example, you don't specify because you want to be able to use it anywhere. You don't want to specify the cell names. And that's it. Almost that's it. You'll notice our numbers are kind of not rounded because we didn't round. Let's round. So 3.8 and 11.3 and so on. We're getting 3.7, 11.2, which is pretty close. So we need to round. So we'll simply use the worksheet function because that's what they told us to do. So worksheet function dot round. It's a function, the round. It takes what you want to round, which is this equation, comma. How much do you want to round by? We want to only round by 1 decimal point, so I'll say 1. And that's it. So we run this, or not run it from here. We'll actually use it from here. We can't run it over there because now it's the function. You'll notice now it works, 3.8, 11.3, 11, etc. Just like the screenshot of the solution. Cool. Do we have anything we want to say here? Again, it's very important, like usually the things that mess up what we're trying to do is maybe missing a comma or not really opening or adding like maybe unnecessary parentheses. Like I might add a parenthesis here and I might not close it, or I might close it in the wrong place and that causes problems. So yeah, just be careful. Just break it down in as many steps as you can. Like notice how I started it. First, I wrote height times base over 2 because that's the equation of the triangle. Then I thought, oh, I should pressed help by mistake. I should put the answer for that somewhere. I did another mistake which I'll mention in a second. I should put that answer somewhere, so I'll say, and the answer has to be triangle area equals. Did you notice the mistake that I did? Height, I spelled it wrong here, which is a big problem because this is a variable that doesn't exist. You have to make a lot of the mistake that I noticed was the misspelling. So make sure I'm not saying spell the word correctly. I'm just saying if you decided a certain way to write a word, make sure you keep using that. So if you wrote like height with 2 T's at the end, make sure you keep using it that way. Okay. So that's what we did so far. Then I checked if my answer worked. It was working. Then I decided to add the worksheet round function, and we kept going. What I'm trying to say is if you try to do everything in one go, like where should I put my answer, and now how am I gonna round, and so on, it's a lot of things to think about in one go. Break it down as much as you can to baby steps or smaller problems. Okay, last function for this lab. Net profit function. Open the auction sheet, create a VBA function called net profit. We'll do that. Usually I'd go to a new model and I'd insert that, but just for the sake of testing it, I'll show you that it's fine. You can have multiple functions at the same place. So I'll say net profit. Press enter. You'll notice it adds like a horizontal line here, kind of like separating the function. So this is its own entity and this is its own entity. Net profit, what does it take as parameter? It takes as input the cost of one item, the price received, the quantity sold, and it should return something. So it's going to take 3 parameters. The cost of one item. Okay, so I'll say cost as single, and I think they want the price received and one more thing. The quantity sold. So quantity sold as single. And notice they did technically tell us to open the sheet auction because it'll be helpful to see what are the columns we're working with, but technically I could write the function without even looking at the sheet until at the very end when I need to use it. Because just let's see. They're saying, oh, I take 3 parameters, I wrote them, and I gave them the names that they want. It returns the net profit after paying 10% tax to the government. The result should be rounded to the nearest 2 digits. Again, they're asking for a lot of things. Let's break it down. First of all, let's forget about the tax and forget about the rounding. Okay, let's do the first part. You have a cost of an item. You have how much you got paid for it. And you have the quantity sold, how many you sold of it. Okay, let's actually look at the sheet to make it easier on ourselves. We technically don't need it, but it does help. So for example here, you have the cost of an item is 4,000. You have the price received 4,500. Like it cost you 4K to do it. You paid 4.5K, or you got paid 4.5K. So what profit did you make? Subtract them. If you remove from the price received the cost, you get your profit. Then you multiply it by how many times you've sold that item. That doesn't make sense. If I want to know how much money I made, I'll remove the cost of making the item from how much I got paid for it. Then I'll multiply it by how many instances did I sell. So let's write that so far. Remember, I'll just put the answer in net profit. So we could actually do this step right away. So cost, or price received, minus the cost. All of that. So now the brackets are important. I have to put all of this between parentheses and multiply that by the quantity sold. I could have named these X, Y, and Z, and I would have been really confused, or I could have named them meaningful names like how we did here. So the price I received minus the cost times the quantity sold. That's my profit. Okay. Then what? Then I should pay 10% tax to the government. So this is the number, this is the profit that you currently made. You want to remove 10% of that and give it to the government. So how much money did you actually make? Well, right now it's 100%, right? 10% of that is going to go to the government. So you're left with 90%. You could subtract from it, like I could write the whole thing over and subtract from it 10% or like 0.1. I could do that, but that makes it really long. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to multiply the whole thing by 0.9. Hopefully that made sense. Remember, like 100% is simply like 1. So 90% is 0.9. You literally removed 10% from your profit. Okay, great. And finally, we want to do the rounding. Now, technically, before I did all of this, I would have liked to test it a lot. Like once I wrote this, I would have went to Excel and actually tried it out, see if what I have so far is working. Like equals net profit, so the function appears. What is the order that we wrote? Cost, price received, quantity sold. So cost, price received, quantity sold. I'd see my answer is 1140. It's kind of close, so maybe it makes sense. I have to remove the tax and round. So I'll remove now the tax times 0.9. So always try to test out what you're doing. Don't wait until the very end. Okay, 1026. So this is actually the answer that we got at the very beginning. Great. Now if we autofill this, not everything might be great. Like this one is 3499.7. And it is. Okay, did they do actually rounding here? Okay. I might not be able to see a certain number, but we probably need to do some, let's do some rounding. So the result should be rounded to the nearest 2 digits. So I'll simply use worksheet function.round just like before. You need to be very careful with the brackets. So I'll paste this here and at the very end, comma 2. That's it. I'm rounding it to do the 2 decimal points. Okay. Okay, so some things did change. What changed? Whoops. Guess I can't see the change anymore. But some numbers, I may have imagined it, but some numbers did change. So hopefully now our numbers are just like the snapshot. Okay, cool. So yeah, again, what did we do? We imagine it. Let's break down the steps one last time. The thing I have highlighted in blue, this is what we did first. I only did this part, like my actual profit. I went and tested it. Then I multiplied it by the 0.9 to remove the tax for the government. I then went and tested it. Okay, it makes more sense. Then finally we did the whole rounding. I can't stress enough how much people might miss a bracket here, or just be careful is what I'm trying to say with the order. Try to practice as much as you can so it becomes easier and you're less prone to do mistakes. If you find yourself doing a lot of these brackets missing or misspelling or all that, write it as a checklist. If you feel you're always misspelling or you're always missing a bracket, write a checklist. When you do see this red error, check, is one of your checklist wrong? Like, did I misspell something somewhere, or did I miss a bracket, etc. And hopefully you won't be making a lot of mistakes. But yeah, that's it for this lab. Hopefully it made some sense. We still have one more lab. I'll do a guideline solution for it, and that would have been it for this semester. Okay. See you in the next one. Bye.